Welcome back to Living Green. I'm your host, Kimon Kotos, and I'm here with Paul Keiser of Agriculture and Health Alive. And we're here today discussing various issues related to not only agriculture, but in terms of health and food and personal well-being. Agriculture is a significant industry here in Michigan, but it's vital to all of us in terms of our ability to eat and be nourished and have a healthy mind. So we think it's important that people understand where their food comes from, why it's important to protect the earth, and why that we really need to listen to each other so that we can have a planet that we can all be confident of. Let's talk a little bit about, when we left, we were talking about some of the natural disasters that are happening, but many of them are man-made because of consequences that we've handled our food production and also the way development. Recently, we've had catastrophic floods in Pakistan that have wiped out millions of acres and devastated their country. India, China. Here in the United States, we've seen record floods and things that we haven't seen in the past. Let's talk about some of the consequences that happen from overproduction or not properly dealing with environmental protection.
Well, we have a petroleum addiction, and this causes there are hundreds of fires on these offshore platforms through the year and in other refinery facilities and things like that. We just don't read about it. It's not reported. Most of it is not reported. And so the spill was in the September or October National Geographic magazine. It was called The Spill, even though it was a gusher, not a spill. The Exxon Valdez was a spill, but this was a gusher coming out of the seafloor of the Gulf. That in that article, it says that there are hundreds of toxic compounds in crude oil. I mean, I just couldn't even imagine hundreds. Benzenes and toluenes and different things like that kill and that cause disease. And some of these toxic industrial wastes are used commercially, and we've got these things in our rugs and in our particle board, and even the printer's ink has an awful smell today. Paint has become toxic because they're putting these toxic wastes in these things, and there's no laws against this. Road deicers can have toxic industrial wastes in them. Commercial chemical fertilizers can have toxic industrial waste and medical waste in them. There's no laws against it. Land O'Lakes Cenex Corporation is doing it. It was discovered in Quincy, Washington, by the mayor there, Patty Martin, and a couple of her farmer friends. And so we've got to change the culture and get off this petroleum addiction and get back to more benevolent things, growing herbs for medicinal purposes and herbs for culinary purposes. It doesn't take much fertilization to grow herbs. In fact, they like kind of rough, not so fertile soil. And so it's just some compost and a little kelp spray on them is all most of the herbs need, and they do wonderfully, and they feed the pollinators. And so when I do a garden, I'm thinking of the pollinators and feeding the pollinators and finding habitat for toads and things like this. So I have different blossoms that are blooming through the growing season. And I have all sorts of pollinators that come to the garden. And I have sunflowers that block wind on the west and north sides. And even if there's deer nearby, they come and nibble the blossoms and often don't go into the garden and bother the plants. And then the pollinators will fertilize the sunflowers. And then in the fall, the birds will come and eat it.
Well, you mentioned pollinators, and one of the things I remember from the information about Steiner and biodynamic gardening was that the relationship between the plants and the insects and the birds is it's really essential, and we often take it for granted, but we've seen in the past 10-20 years issues in terms of the bees and other things like that. So all these things kind of work together in harmony or disharmony, and it's not just the land, it's also the water, it's also our oceans with all the factory fishing that we've had. We've wiped out stocks of the diversity of fish. So we're seeing major impacts on this planet. And it's not just a doomsday kind of approach that, run for your life because everything's going wrong, but it's actually having a conscious approach about recognizing where our food is coming from, what are we doing to sustain it? And I think that that's really where the debate should be about.
Yes, yes. Well, Jiddu Krishnamurti, the philosopher who was from southern India and traveled the world lecturing, said that all human problems arise from a lack of attention. And Masaru Emoto has done these studies with water and shown the effects on water in our body is 65-70% water. And the fact that we are very powerful, human beings are very powerful entities, and the thoughts and feelings that we're giving off have a positive or a negative effect on our environment. And when Christ stilled the waters and the winds, we have these powers, we just haven't been trained in them. We have the same powers. And he showed that when a glass of water, when love and gratitude are shown to it, these beautiful crystalline forms form in it. But when it's like, I hate you, or I'm going to smash you, or this type of thing, then the crystalline forms are all broken up and the water's murky. Heavy metal music makes murky, polluted water. But beautiful, beautiful symphonic, good symphonies, there are some very poor symphonies, make these beautiful crystalline patterns in the water. An unpolluted environment has beautiful, healthy water with these wonderful crystals in it. Polluted water, it's all broken down. And so in our body, with being 70% water, we respond. That's what's happening with our health. What kind of healthy things are we putting out? And this is projected out into the garden. It's projected onto the land. If we have a pond or a lake nearby or a river, what we're doing and who we are is projected into those things. Good music will benefit that. Destructive sounds, hot rods, racing their loud pickups and all this kind of stuff. Explosions, those kind of things. Bad music puts out bad, destructive sounds, and so that's why the Japanese landscapes are so wonderful. They're so beautiful and artistic, and it's just there's ceremonies. They do ceremonies and things like this. Our ancestors used to do these things. Our indigenous ancestors, and they prayed before they planted. They prayed before they went hunting. They prayed before they built a shelter. They prayed before a baby was going to come. So there was these prayers and these ceremonies and rituals that had to do with being in a beautiful space, and for the Creator to take care of us, and for our descendants, to create the spirits in all the life around us. And these are the kind of things, and getting back to doing beautiful things and wonderful things and creating beauty. That's what's going to make for a healthy landscape and for healthy children.
So our thoughts and deeds do have an impact, and really giving thanks and appreciating where we come from makes a big difference.
Absolutely.
Well, stay with us and we'll be right back.